There are moments when silence becomes the loudest prayer. Harper stepped into the old stone church just before dusk, her footsteps echoing against cold marble. Rain traced the windows like tears from heaven, each drop whispering her name. Her coat clung to her shoulders, heavy not from water, but from everything she'd been carrying alone. And for the first time in years, she didn't run. Candles burned low at the altar, their light flickering in quiet sympathy. The air smelled of dust, wax, and the faint sweetness of lilies left behind from last Sunday's service. She sat in the third pew, clutching her trembling hands as if holding the last fragments of herself. Her breath came shallow, and her eyes lifted slowly toward the cross. "If you still hear me," she whispered, "please don't let me disappear." The church didn't answer, but something unseen shifted. It was as if heaven inhaled, listening closer. A warmth spread through the still air, brushing against her cheek. And for a fleeting second she felt seen, not by the world, but by grace. Then, from the back pew, came the faint sound of movement. She froze. The sound wasn't thunder, nor wind. It was footsteps, soft, hesitant, like someone carrying regret instead of rain. Her pulse raced as she turned toward the sound, heart pounding. And there he was, Logan. He stood in the shadows near the last pew, hair damp from the storm, eyes green and unguarded. For a heartbeat, time folded, years of distance erased by recognition. He didn't speak, and neither did she, but the silence between them said everything words never could. Something divine was stirring in the space between heartbreak and forgiveness. Harper lowered her gaze, unsure if this was mercy or a test. But when she closed her eyes, she felt a calm she couldn't name. It was the kind of peace that doesn't ask question. It simply arrives. Her tears fell freely now, not from despair, but from release. Because sometimes, the miracle isn't what enters the church. It's what walks out changed. The rain outside softened into a rhythm that felt almost holy. Each drop against the window became a heartbeat, steady and real. Harper sat still, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever peace had found her. The scent of wax and wet earth wrapped around her like a prayer shawl. For the first time in months, she wasn't surviving. She was simply breathing. Her mind wandered through the wreckage of the past few years. The job that drained her spirit. The love that fractured without goodbye. Every unanswered prayer. Every night she'd whispered into silence. She had told herself God had grown distant. But maybe she was the one who had left. And now, sitting in this quiet church, she wondered if he'd been waiting all along. She glanced toward the stained glass window, where colors danced in fading light. A golden hue fell across her lap, like sunlight remembering her name. It felt too gentle to be coincidence. Her fingers traced the wooden pew, rough beneath her palms. This was holy ground, even if her heart still trembled. At the back of the church, Logan watched her silently. His breath caught as if seeing her summoned every memory he'd tried to bury. He hadn't meant to follow her, but something stronger than guilt had led him there. The same church where everything had ended was now pulling him back. And he didn't know if it was for forgiveness or for closure. He took one slow step forward, the creak of the floor echoing through the hall. Harper turned, startled, eyes wide with disbelief. They stared at each other, two ghosts of the same story. Time didn't rewind, but it hesitated long enough for grace to enter. The storm outside dimmed, as if heaven wanted to hear every word. "Logan?" Her voice was barely a whisper, fragile yet fierce. He nodded once, unable to speak. There was no script for this moment, no safe way to begin again, only the unspoken truth that they had both changed. And maybe that was enough. He took another step closer, his eyes softer than she remembered. "I didn't come to make things harder," he said finally. His voice cracked, more confession than apology. "I came because I couldn't stay away anymore." Harper blinked back tears that refused to wait for permission. "You left without a word," she whispered. "And now you walk back with silence?" He lowered his gaze, shoulders heavy with things he couldn't fix. "I thought distance would protect you," he said. "But it only broke us both." Harper wanted to believe him. but hurt still had its claws. Even so, something in her heart softened, just enough to listen. Sometimes faith begins not with trust, but with the willingness to stay in the room. A gust of wind slipped through the cracked window, stirring the candles. The flames bent, but did not go out. Harper watched, realizing that's what grace looked like. Bending, not breaking. She inhaled deeply, the scent of rain and redemption filling her lungs. And somewhere between anger and mercy, she whispered, "Maybe this is where we start again." Logan's lips parted, but no words came. He just nodded, eyes glistening with the weight of unspoken prayers. In the silence that followed, something invisible shifted, like heaven leaning in. Neither of them moved, yet both felt the ground beneath them change. Forgiveness hadn't arrived yet, but hope had taken its seat. Outside, the clouds began to part, letting streaks of gold fall through the stained glass. The church no longer looked abandoned. It looked alive. Harper turned her gaze toward the altar, tears catching the light. Logan followed her eyes, and for the first time he bowed his head beside her. It wasn't reconciliation. It was surrender. The bell tower chimed once, long and low. Its echo traveled through the empty streets and straight into her chest. She didn't know if it meant goodbye or beginning, but something in her soul whispered, "Heaven just heard you." And that was enough to stay a little longer. Harper wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, embarrassed by her tears. But Logan didn't look away. He looked humbled, almost reverent. He had seen her strong before, but never sacred like this. She wasn't the same woman he'd left behind, and maybe that was the point. God had rewritten her pain into something unbreakable. "Do you still believe?" he asked softly. The question hung between them like the scent of rain. She thought for a long time before answering. "I stopped believing in people for a while," she said. "But I never stopped believing in grace." He nodded, eyes wet, realizing she'd found what he had lost. The candles flickered once more, brighter now, almost aware. Shadows danced against the stone walls, forming crosses in motion. Outside, thunder rolled faintly, more like applause than warning. Harper looked up at the cross again and smiled through the ache. She whispered, "If you brought him here, then I'll listen." Logan stepped forward and knelt beside the pew where she sat. No words, no explanations, just shared silence under holy light. They weren't asking for the past to return, only for peace to stay. And somehow it did. The air thickened with something sacred. It felt like the church itself exhaled. Minutes passed before either of them spoke again. Harper finally said, "I didn't expect to see you here." Logan answered, "Neither did I. But I think heaven did." Their quiet laughter carried through the hall like a fragile hymn, and for the first time, silence didn't hurt. It healed. When they left that evening, the rain had stopped completely. The steps of the old church glistened under the street lamps. Logan held the door open as Harper walked out, her eyes softer now. The world hadn't changed, but something in them had, because heaven had been listening all along. The next morning came quietly, like mercy arriving unannounced. Harper sat at her small kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold. The city was still half asleep, mist rising from the pavement outside. But her thoughts were awake, looping through the night before. Logan's voice still echoed softly in her mind, more prayer than memory. She had told herself that chapter was closed long ago, yet somehow it had reopened without warning, not in chaos or confrontation, but in stillness. He hadn't demanded forgiveness, he'd simply shown up. And that, strangely, had spoken louder than all his apologies could. The church, once a place of heartbreak, now felt magnetic. She found herself walking there again as if drawn by something unseen. Sunlight poured through clouds in long, golden ribbons. When she reached the steps, the wooden doors were already open. And there, at the back pew, again, was Logan. He stood this time, sleeves rolled up, helping an elderly janitor clean the floor. His coat was gone. His hands were raw from work. For a moment, Harper just watched, quiet and curious. The man she'd known had never done humble things. Now he looked like someone learning how to rebuild from the ground up. When he noticed her, he froze, broom still in hand. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he said, voice low, uncertain. Harper smiled faintly. "Neither did I." The janitor looked between them, then nodded knowingly. "Looks like Grace isn't done here yet," he muttered before leaving. They laughed softly, the kind of laughter that loosens the air. For a moment it felt easy, two people finding light in familiar walls. But then silence returned, heavier this time, because some stories can't move forward until truth walks in, and both knew it was waiting just behind the next sentence. "Harper," Logan began, his tone sincere, almost trembling. "I didn't come back just to apologize. I came back because I remembered who I was here." She tilted her head, unsure what he meant. "This church," he continued. "It was where I first believed God could use someone like me." He paused, eyes glistening. "And somewhere along the way, I stopped believing that." She leaned against the pew, fingers tracing the worn wood. "Maybe you didn't lose faith," she said gently. "Maybe you just forgot what it looked like." He smiled, that faint, sad smile she remembered too well. "You always did see things clearer than I could." "Maybe," she replied. "But I was also the one who lost hope first." A ray of light broke through the stained glass, cutting between them. It painted her face in warm amber and his in deep blue. Two colors, two stories. Both broken, both reaching toward the same light. He whispered, "Maybe this is God giving us a second chance, not at love, but at peace." She nodded slowly. "Maybe peace is the greatest miracle of all." They spent the next hour cleaning the pews together in quiet harmony. Each motion felt like repentance wrapped in routine. He swept dust. She polished wood. The church didn't need them, but maybe they needed the church. By the time they finished, sunlight filled every corner. As they stood by the door, Harper turned to him. "Do you plan on staying?" she asked softly. Logan hesitated, then looked toward the altar. "If Grace lets me." She smiled faintly, holding the door open. "Then I guess you already have." And with that, she walked out, the wind carrying faint music from the bell tower. Outside, the air smelled of rain and lilies. She stood on the steps, eyes closed, letting the warmth touch her face. Behind her, the church doors creaked softly, not closing, but breathing. It felt alive again, pulsing with something holy, because two broken souls had decided to show up. That evening, Harper returned home and placed her keys on the table. Her small apartment felt lighter, somehow less haunted. She poured tea, sat by the window, and opened her journal. On the first blank page she wrote, "He came back, but so did peace." And for the first time, she smiled without needing a reason. Far across town, Logan sat outside the church beneath the soft glow of the lamplight. He stared at the doors, unsure if he deserved to enter again. But then he remembered her words. Maybe peace is the greatest miracle of all. And with that, he closed his eyes, whispering, "Then let peace find me here." The night carried his prayer straight into heaven's waiting hands. The next day began with sunlight breaking through the last of the storm clouds. Harper woke earlier than usual, heart restless but calm. Something inside her whispered that she should return to the church. Not to see Logan, at least that's what she told herself. But the truth was simpler. She wasn't done listening to heaven. When she arrived, the doors were open again. The janitor waved at her with a smile before slipping out. She stepped inside, greeted by warmth and the faint scent of wax. The air felt alive, as if the building had begun to breathe again. And near the altar, she saw him. Logan was sitting in the front pew, holding a folded letter. His posture was quiet, reverent, like a man waiting for permission to hope. He didn't notice her at first, too caught in prayer or memory. But when he finally turned, their eyes met like sunlight through fog. Neither spoke, because words would have ruined the holiness of silence. After a moment, Harper approached and sat beside him. "Another letter?" she asked softly, nodding to the paper in his hand. He nodded. "Father Thomas's handwriting. I found it in one of the pews." Her eyes widened. "Father Thomas and the old priest?" Logan smiled faintly. "Looks like he left one last sermon." He unfolded the page, the ink faded but legible. "To those who return to this church with hearts unfinished," it began. Do not look for God in perfection. Look for Him in the cracks where light gets in. They read the rest in silence, their hearts pacing with each word. And when it ended, Harper whispered, "Maybe that's why we came back." Logan folded the letter carefully as though afraid to break it. "I thought I came to apologize," he said, "but maybe I came to remember." She nodded, hands clasped on her lap. "You can't rebuild what you refuse to revisit." He looked at her then, eyes glimmering like stained glass in sunlight. "You sound like him," he said softly. "Like Father Thomas." She laughed quietly, wiping a tear that surprised her. "Maybe grief teaches you to speak differently," she said. "Or maybe grace just gives you better words." He smiled, the kind that carried both sorrow and relief. And for the first time in years, they sat without needing to defend their pain. Outside, a breeze moved through the courtyard, carrying birdsong. The window light danced on the floor like shifting halos. Harper felt something inside her unclench. Not healed yet, but willing. Logan reached for the letter again, tracing the last line with his thumb. "If you are reading this, you are already forgiven." Tears welled in his eyes before he could stop them. Harper didn't look away. She let him break, quietly, safely. She knew that kind of pain, the one that cleanses rather than destroys. So she simply reached out, resting her hand near his on the pew. Not touching, but close enough for grace to fill the space between. For a long time, neither spoke. The sound of wind against glass replaced every sentence. Logan finally whispered, "I think I needed to cry here, not anywhere else." She smiled softly. "Then maybe this is holy ground for both of us." And in that stillness, the church felt more alive than it had in years. When they finally stood, the letter still lay between them. "Keep it," Harper said. "You found it." He shook his head. "No, it found us." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Then we'll leave it here, for the next soul who needs it." And together, they placed it gently back in the pew. As they walked toward the exit, sunlight struck the cross above the altar. The gold shimmered brighter than before, as if heaven approved. Harper paused at the doorway, hand resting on the frame. "Funny," she said softly. "I came here looking for peace, but I keep finding purpose." Logan smiled. "Maybe they're the same thing." Outside, the air smelled of rain and resurrection. Children's laughter echoed from the nearby street, light and free. Logan watched her step into the sunlight, her face glowing in gold. He realized that grace didn't look like perfection. It looked like her. And for the first time, he whispered, "Thank you." Not to her, but to God. That night, Harper wrote in her journal again, candlelight flickering beside her. She wrote, "Sometimes compassion feels like a mirror. It reflects the pain we've hidden too long." Her pen hesitated, then added, "But when you see love inside it, healing begins." She closed the notebook and smiled at the stillness. Heaven had spoken, gently, but loud enough to stay. Later that evening, the rain returned, soft as a lullaby. Harper sat by the window, watching droplets chase each other down the glass. Each one carried the reflection of candlelight, small, trembling, yet unextinguished. She thought about Father Thomas's letter, and how truth always finds the broken first. Maybe that was Grace's favorite language, the sound of surrender. Across town, Logan sat in his car outside Grace's house, headlights dimmed. The letter's words still echoed in his mind. "You are already forgiven." He realized forgiveness didn't erase what happened. It simply stopped it from owning him. He looked up at the sky, letting the rain touch his face. "All right, Lord," he whispered. "If you still want me here, I'll stay." That night, heaven seemed closer than it had in years. No lightning, no thunder, just the quiet rhythm of rain and mercy. Harper dreamed of light spilling through stained glass, filling her with warmth. In her dream, she saw Logan kneeling beside her, both silent, both whole. And she knew the miracle had already begun. Inside, where no one could see. The next morning, she woke with peace that didn't ask to be explained. The world outside still carried its noise, but her soul stayed still. She dressed slowly, folded her journal and whispered, "Thank you." Then, without thinking, she smiled. because pain had met compassion and both had bowed, and heaven, satisfied, kept writing. The following week brought clearer skies and calmer hearts. Grace House began to hum again with quiet restoration. Harper arrived early, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a letter she hadn't finished reading. The old floorboards creaked beneath her steps like familiar hymns. Each sound felt like the rhythm of faith returning home. Logan was already there, fixing a broken window near the altar. Sunlight poured through the cracked glass, forming a soft rainbow across the floor. He looked peaceful, almost different, like guilt had been traded for purpose. When he turned and saw her, his smile was simple but sincere. "Morning," he said. "I saved you the warmer cup." She laughed softly, setting hers beside his on the wooden rail. "You're early again," she said. "Starting to think you live here." He shrugged. "Maybe I do now. Feels like heaven's been renting me a corner." They shared a small, knowing silence. Sometimes laughter was the only language Grace spoke fluently. On the table behind them lay Father Thomas's old Bible, its pages worn from years of touch, opened to a marked verse. Harper glanced down. "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." She traced the words with trembling fingers. It felt like the verse had waited decades for her arrival. Logan watched her quietly, the weight of reverence in his eyes. "I think he meant for you to find that," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "Maybe he meant for both of us to remember." Outside, wind rustled the trees, scattering golden leaves like blessings. The church no longer felt heavy. It felt alive. As they worked together, Logan found an envelope hidden under the floorboard. It was sealed with wax, the initials FT pressed faintly into it. Harper gasped, covering her mouth with both hands. He held it out, hesitant, like one offers sacred ground. "Should we open it?" he asked. They sat by the window as light filtered through the dust. Harper broke the seal carefully, unfolding the yellowed paper. It read, "For whoever finds this, know that God never forgets where he planted you. Even the lost roots still bloom when watered with mercy." Her eyes blurred as she read the final line aloud. "And if you are reading this, the miracle has already begun." Tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. Logan reached for her hand this time. Not out of pity, but partnership. His palm was warm, steady, unhurried. "Do you believe it?" he asked softly. She nodded. "I think I'm living proof." For a while they said nothing. The silence between them felt like prayer in motion. Outside, a single sunbeam fell through the repaired window, landing perfectly on the Bible. The pages fluttered open as if turned by invisible hands. It stopped at the same verse again. "My grace is sufficient." Harper exhaled a shaky breath, heart beating in rhythm with the wind. "Funny," she said. "I used to ask for signs, but they were always quiet." Logan smiled. "Maybe that's why they work, because only peace can hear them." She met his eyes, and for the first time saw no regret there. Only gratitude, and the reflection of her own faith. The afternoon light softened as the church bells began to ring. They stood by the doorway watching dust shimmer in golden air. Logan turned to her. "Do you ever wonder why we found all this now?" She thought for a moment. "Because broken things take time to bloom." He smiled, and heaven must have too. That evening, Harper sat alone in the front pew. The empty church glowed with candlelight, every flame whispering peace. She whispered a prayer, not asking for anything this time, just thanking him for remembering her when she'd forgotten herself, and for the miracle that chose to stay quiet, yet real. Outside, rain began to fall again. Slow, cleansing, deliberate. It tapped softly against the window like gentle applause. Logan appeared in the doorway, umbrella in hand, smiling at her. "Come on," he said. "Let's not let the rain wash away our work." She laughed, taking his hand as they stepped into the night together. The streets glistened beneath the lamplight, reflections dancing like liquid gold. Harper looked up at the clouds, tears mixing with rain. "Thank you," she whispered, "for hiding miracles where no one looks." Beside her, Logan's grip tightened, a silent amen. And the night, listening, blessed them with quiet thunder. That night, She wrote only one sentence in her journal. Some prayers don't break because they fail. They break because they're opening. She closed the book and pressed it to her chest. In the stillness, she felt heaven's warmth settle gently around her, and for the first time in years, her heart slept unguarded. That evening, clouds gathered like memories that refused to stay buried. The scent of rain filled the air before a single drop fell. Harper locked the doors of Grace House, glancing once toward the altar. The candlelight trembled under the draft, casting halos across the walls. It was going to be one of those nights when heaven came close. She lingered, not ready to leave the peace she'd found inside. The sound of thunder rolled softly like distant applause. She traced her fingers along the pew where she had first prayed again. So much pain had been poured out here, and now it glowed with purpose. It felt like God had rewritten the room with grace. Outside, lightning flashed and rain began to fall in waves. Harper opened the door just enough to watch it dance across the street. Drops hit the ground like shattered diamonds under lamplight. In the reflection of the puddles, the church looked alive. Maybe storms didn't destroy sacred places. They baptized them. Logan appeared behind her, his voice soft beneath the storm's hum. "You should get inside. It's getting rough out there." She smiled faintly, not moving from the doorway. "I used to hate the rain," she said. "But lately it feels like mercy." He nodded, stepping closer, the candlelight catching his green eyes. They stood in silence, the rain filling every gap words couldn't. Each drop seemed to carry something holy between heaven and earth. Harper finally whispered, "Do you ever wonder why it took so long?" Logan looked down, water dripping from his hair. "Because I wasn't ready to stay," he said. "And you weren't ready to let go." His honesty broke something open inside her. Not pain, but clarity. She turned to face him fully, the storm's glow behind her. "Then maybe this isn't about what we lost," she said. "Maybe it's about what survived." Her voice shook, but not from fear, from faith finding its footing again. Logan smiled, the kind that trembles between surrender and peace. A crack of thunder echoed above, shaking the windows. They both laughed, a sound too raw to be rehearsed. The candles flickered, one by one, until only one remained. Harper watched its flame bend, but never die. "That's us," she said softly. "Still burning even when it storms." Logan reached for the last candle, shielding it with his hand. He placed it near the altar, its glow reflected in his eyes. "This light," he said, "doesn't belong to either of us." She nodded, stepping closer. "No, it belongs to the one who never left." Outside, the thunder softened, replaced by the rhythm of steady rain. Minutes passed before either spoke again. The church was quiet except for the wind brushing through the cracks. Harper sank to her knees near the altar, not out of weakness, but worship. Tears fell freely, joining the rain outside in sacred harmony. And somewhere unseen, angels listened and wept with her. Logan knelt beside her, his hand resting on the cold stone floor. He didn't speak or reach for her. He simply stayed. In silence, they offered the most honest prayer of all: presence. Their tears glistened under the faint light of the candle, and heaven moved, drew nearer. After what felt like forever, she stood slowly, eyes red but calm. The air around them felt lighter, as if grief had finished its work. Logan exhaled deeply, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in years. Harper turned to him, whispering, "I think the storm came to clean us." He nodded, and left just enough rain to grow something new. When they stepped outside, the rain had softened to a whisper. Puddles mirrored the stained glass, fractured yet beautiful. The scent of wet earth rose, mingling with candle smoke from within. Harper tilted her head back, letting the rain touch her skin. It felt like absolution. Liquid grace. They walked together under one umbrella, close but unhurried. The streets shone with reflections of gold and silver. No one else was out, just them and the quiet night. For once, they didn't need to speak of the past, because redemption was already rewriting the present. When they reached the corner, Harper stopped to look back. The church stood glowing in the distance, windows alive with light. It looked less like a building and more like a heartbeat. She smiled softly, whispering, "Thank you for not giving up on us." And somewhere above, thunder rolled again, gentle, approving. That night she couldn't sleep, but she didn't want to. She sat by the window, watching the rain slow into mist. Every drop on the glass felt like a hymn, a blessing in motion. She whispered one last prayer before closing her eyes. "Lord, if this is what healing feels like, don't let it end too soon." The morning came soft, like a sigh heaven had been holding. The storm had passed, leaving the air clear and full of promise. Sunlight spilled through the church windows, painting the pews in color. Harper stood at the door of Grace's house, coffee in hand, smiling faintly. It felt like the first real morning of her life. Inside, Logan was fixing a loose floorboard by the altar. His shirt sleeves were rolled, sawdust clinging to his hair. He looked up when she entered, and for a moment, everything was still. The light caught him perfectly, not like a man from her past, but one restored. "Morning," he said, his voice quiet but sure. She set a folder down on the table beside him. "These are the plans for the renovation," she said. "Grace's house will finally open." He raised an eyebrow, smiling. "Grace's house, huh? Perfect name." Harper laughed softly, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Father Thomas would have loved it," she said. "He always said grace was a verb." They worked side by side, silence comfortable between them. Each sound, hammer, breath, heartbeat, blended into rhythm. At one point, Logan looked at her, expression thoughtful. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" She nodded. "Sometimes I think about how close we came to never coming back." A knock echoed at the door. Harper went to open it. A woman stood there holding a clipboard, rain boots still damp. "City inspection," she said briskly. "We received a complaint about zoning." Logan froze. Harper's stomach dropped. The word complaint hung heavy in the air like thunder before lightning. They showed the inspector around, doing their best to stay calm. Every corner, every plan was questioned and checked twice. When she finally left, Harper closed the door slowly. For a moment, silence felt sharp. "Why does Grace always have to be tested?" she whispered. Logan rubbed the back of his neck, exhaling deeply. "Because the enemy doesn't fight what isn't rebuilding," he said. Harper looked at him, surprise flickering into gratitude. "Since when did you start preaching?" she asked, smiling. He chuckled. "Since God stopped whispering and started shouting." The next morning brought heavier news, an official notice on the door. Harper unfolded it, hands trembling. Construction suspended pending review. She sank onto the steps, heart pounding. All the progress, all the peace, paused again. Logan sat beside her, silent, steady, unshaken. "Maybe this isn't the end," he said gently. "Maybe it's just a rewrite." Harper blinked away tears, whispering, "You really believe that?" He nodded. "I've seen God fix worse than paper." The corner of her mouth lifted despite the ache. Faith was catching up to fear, one breath at a time. Later that afternoon, volunteers began to arrive. Word had spread, and no one wanted to stop the work. Harper stood at the doorway, moved to tears by their faithfulness. "Looks like heaven's got more workers than paperwork," Logan said, and laughter broke through what used to be tension. They prayed together before resuming, hands joined in quiet defiance. The tools returned to motion. The walls echoed with new hymns. Every sound was a declaration. "We're not quitting." The scent of paint filled the air, mingling with sunlight and prayer. And in that moment, heaven began rewriting the chapter for them. By evening, the walls gleamed white and the floor shone like new. Harper stood in the center, heart full to overflowing. Logan walked up beside her, holding a small brass bell. "Found this in Father Thomas's box," he said softly. "He used it for beginnings." She smiled. "Then it's time we start ours." She rang the bell once. Its echo filled every corner. Outside, the wind carried the sound through the streets. Children paused their play, shopkeepers looked up from their counters. It wasn't just a sound, and it was a message. Grace's house was alive, and so were they. That night, as candles flickered in every window, Harper wrote again. "Today, heaven proved that endings can't touch what grace rewrites." Her handwriting trembled, but her spirit didn't. For the first time in years, she didn't pray for peace. She lived in it. And the story, finally, began to rest. Before leaving, Logan lingered by the doorway, watching the candles sway. Their glow painted the room in warmth, flickering like living prayers. He whispered, "You did it, Harper. You turned brokenness into a home." She looked up from her notebook and smiled softly. "No," she said. "God did. I just said yes." He stepped outside, the cool night air brushing his face. The sound of laughter from the volunteers still echoed in the distance. He realized that joy had become the language of this place. Every nail hammered, every wall rebuilt was a hymn, and he was finally part of the choir again. Harper blew out the last candle, watching smoke curl upward like a promise. It rose toward the ceiling, twisting in gold before fading into the air. For a moment she saw Father Thomas in her mind, smiling, proud. She whispered, "We finished it." Then she closed the door, her heart lighter than it had ever been. Outside, rain began to fall again, gentle, cleansing, familiar. She stood under it, face lifted, letting each drop bless her anew. The night hummed with quiet gratitude, as if heaven were humming back. Harper closed her eyes and smiled through the rain, because she finally understood. Grace doesn't erase endings, it rewrites them. Morning arrived with light spilling across Grace House like revelation. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed and breathing again. Harper stood by the window, watching children run through puddles outside. Their laughter filled the air, pure, unfiltered joy. She whispered, "So this is what peace sounds like." Inside, Logan reviewed the final renovation plans. Blueprints covered the wooden table like pieces of a dream. He traced the lines with careful hands, imagining every wall alive with purpose. When Harper walked in, coffee in hand, he looked up and smiled. "Almost ready," he said. "Heaven's getting new floors today." She laughed softly, setting the mug beside him. Who knew faith involved this much sanding and paint? He shrugged. Maybe God hides miracles in manual labor. She nodded, leaning on the table. Or maybe he's teaching us to build what we pray for. Their eyes met, and for once the silence between them wasn't fragile. As afternoon light filtered through the repaired windows, an envelope arrived. It bore the city seal and a faint smudge of rain. Harper opened it slowly, heart tight in her chest. Her eyes scanned the paper, words swimming before settling. "Grace House, approved," she whispered, trembling with relief. Logan froze, then laughed, a sound so pure it echoed through the hall. He picked her up in a spontaneous spin, the world blurring around them. When he set her down, both were breathless, laughing like children. Harper wiped a tear from her cheek, whispering, "He really did rewrite the ending." Logan nodded. "Told you he was just editing the rough draft." As the news spread, volunteers began to gather outside. Neighbors brought food, flowers, and folded prayers written on scraps of paper. The courtyard filled with the scent of cinnamon, hope, and fresh paint. A small choir from the local parish began to sing softly, and Grace House felt more like heaven than architecture. When Father Thomas's sister Ruth arrived, everyone fell quiet. She carried a small box wrapped in worn velvet. Harper stepped forward, her voice barely steady. "What's that?" Ruth smiled, eyes glistening. "Something he wanted you to have when it was finished." Inside was a brass key and a note that read, "For what is yet to open." Tears filled Harper's eyes as she read the words aloud. Logan placed a hand over hers, steadying her trembling fingers. "He trusted you," Ruth said softly. "He saw what this would become." Harper exhaled, holding the key close to her chest. "Then we'll make sure it never locks out a soul," she whispered. That evening, as the sun began to set, they gathered in prayer. Candles lined the steps, their flames flickering like living testimonies. Harper stood in front, voice trembling with emotion. "This isn't just a building," she said. "It's proof that broken prayers still work." The crowd responded with quiet amens, hearts bowed in awe. As the hymn rose, Logan watched her from a few steps behind. Her face glowed in the golden light, radiant yet human. He realized that faith wasn't meant to live only in words, but in people. In her he saw faith in motion, grace made visible. And he knew he'd witnessed something holy. After the prayer, the sky deepened into soft blue twilight. Fireflies appeared near the garden fence, their light pulsing like breath. Children chased them, laughter echoing against the chapel walls. Harper turned to Logan, smiling through tears. "It feels like heaven decided to stay," she whispered. He looked at her, the candlelight reflected in his green eyes. "Maybe heaven never left," he said softly. "Maybe we just stopped noticing." She laughed quietly, shaking her head in wonder. "For someone who used to run from faith, you talk like a preacher." He smiled. "Maybe I finally started listening." They stayed outside long after the crowd had gone. The night air was cool. The sound of distant bells carried on the wind. Harper leaned against the wooden railing, eyes lifted to the stars. "Funny," she said. "For years I thought faith was a feeling." Logan shook his head. "No, it's a decision." The silence that followed was sacred, unhurried. They both looked back at Grace House, its windows glowing with golden light. Inside, the candles flickered like a heartbeat that wouldn't quit. Harper smiled, whispering, "Where faith met flesh, grace stayed." And in that moment, heaven nodded its silent amen. As the stars multiplied above them, silence turned into sanctuary. The wind brushed softly through the trees, carrying the echo of their laughter. Harper closed her eyes, whispering a prayer too quiet for words. Logan watched her, not in admiration, but in awe, because she looked like forgiveness breathing. From the open windows came the scent of wax and rain. The world beyond Grace House was sleeping, but inside, faith stayed awake. The bell rope swayed gently, though no one touched it. Its soft motion seemed to murmur blessings into the night. Even heaven, it seemed, refused to rest when love remained. Harper turned toward Logan, her face calm under the candlelight. "Tomorrow, everything begins for real," she said softly. He nodded, voice low. "Then let's make sure it begins right." Their hands brushed, not in romance but in promise. And somehow that touch was enough to seal eternity. When they finally parted ways that night, the air glowed with peace. Harper walked home under the moonlight, every step light and steady. Behind her, Grace House shimmered like a living prayer. Logan lingered at the gate, watching the light fade gently. And both knew faith had found a body, and it chose to stay. The morning dawned with gold spilling across the horizon. Birds sang from the eaves of Grace House as if blessing its rebirth. Harper stood by the open window, hair catching the first light. She whispered a quiet thank you, her voice trembling with peace. It was the sound of a promise fulfilled. Volunteers filled the halls once again, laughter echoing off fresh walls. Children ran through the courtyard, their shoes splashing in shallow puddles. Logan stood at the steps, hammer in hand, though the work was done. He didn't need to build anymore. He just needed to stay. And staying felt like the holiest act of all. Inside, Harper hung the final frame on the wall. It was a picture of Father Thomas, smiling with quiet kindness. Beneath it, she placed the brass key and the letter they'd found. For a moment, the air shimmered, as though heaven exhaled approval. Every prayer whispered here had found its echo. That afternoon, a small ceremony gathered the town together. Harper stood at the podium, her hands steady over the microphone. "Grace House isn't just a building," she began softly. "It's proof that mercy still builds what the world abandons." Her words carried like music through the crowd. Logan watched her, pride rising quietly in his chest. He'd once thought strength meant control. Now he saw it was surrender. As Harper spoke, he realized she had become the living sermon he never heard preached. Every sentence she spoke was soaked in redemption, and heaven listening smiled through sunlight. When the ceremony ended, people lingered to pray and share stories. A woman approached Harper, her eyes glistening with tears. "My son was one of the first you helped," she said. "He's smiling again." Harper held her hands, emotion catching in her throat. "Then this house is already doing what it was built for." Later, as dusk fell, the crowd began to thin. The sky turned lavender, clouds brushed with gold at the edges. Logan and Harper stayed behind, sweeping the floor in quiet rhythm. He glanced at her, a soft smile forming. "You realize this is where we met again? Right here?" She nodded, glancing toward the pew where it had all begun. "Funny," she said. "I came in that day ready to quit." He tilted his head. "And now?" She smiled. "Now, I just want to keep saying yes." The simplicity of her words filled the room with warmth. Outside, rain began to fall lightly once more. Not a storm, just a blessing. Drops tapped softly against the stained glass, each one glowing like gold. Harper lifted her face toward it, eyes closed, smiling. "It's like God never runs out of new beginnings," she whispered. Logan nodded. "He just waits until we're ready to see them." They stood in the doorway as the candles flickered behind them. The scent of wax, rain, and lilies mingled into something divine. Harper reached out and took Logan's hand gently. Not to claim, but to thank. And that small gesture became their quiet hallelujah. As night settled, the last candle on the altar dimmed. The flame leaned, then rose again, refusing to die out. It was as if heaven itself was saying, "Not yet." Harper smiled, whispering, "Neither are we." And the silence around them agreed. When she finally stepped outside, the air was cool and forgiving. The city lights flickered in the distance, soft and golden. Harper took one last look at the church that had saved her. She didn't walk away this time, she walked forward. And beside her, Grace kept pace. In the end, Harper didn't find her miracle inside the church. She became it. Every tear that once fell in silence turned into a seed of compassion. Every prayer she thought God ignored was a foundation stone under her feet. Grace House stood as living proof that heaven still works with human hands. And sometimes the greatest miracle isn't found in rescue. It's found in return. Logan stayed by her side, not as the man who broke her story, but who helped rebuild it. Together, they carried light into dark places, one act of kindness at a time. No stage, no spotlight, just purpose. Because redemption isn't loud, it's steady. And their story became a song only heaven could write. The town began to change slowly, quietly, like dawn after a long night. People who once passed by now came to stay, to listen, to heal. Grace became contagious, spreading through laughter, forgiveness, and work. Every time the old bell rang, hearts woke up again. And in every ring the sound of Harper's first prayer still lived. If you've ever felt forgotten, remember this. God never loses sight of his own. You might walk into your battle alone, but you'll never walk out without purpose. He turns empty churches into homes, broken people into builders. And if you're still waiting for your miracle, maybe it's already walking beside you. All you have to do is keep saying yes. If this story touched your heart, don't leave without sharing it. Subscribe to Redeemed Hearts and help us spread stories of faith, grace, and second chances. Your next miracle might be one story away. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. We'd love to pray with you. And remember, grace didn't just find Harper. It's coming for you too.